Let's get to Johnny Mac now. We're going to talk to J Mac for the next 20 minutes or so. We got Nick Sirianni coming up at 9:40 this morning, and then joint practice number 2 will take place right after that, starting at 10 a.m. Let's go to J Mac joining me right now here in a morning edition of Football 24/7. Johnny Mac, welcome into a Thursday morning show. How you doing this morning, brother?
Doing well. Let's do it again.
Are you doing better than the Eagles are at cornerback 2, John?
Sure, yeah. They don't seem. I'm not undecided on things. You know, I get in the car, I go down to practice.
Right.
The Eagles are. Again, as you go through August, you hope when you have competition that things gain clarity as you get later, and they've had to go outside the organization to expand the search. So, yeah, I don't think that by any stretch of the imagination that's a positive. It might be a positive long term if JAKIB Bennett can get his, feet settled and start to pick things up. And who knows? It might long term. It might be a better scenario if he turns out to be a player. But in the short term, their plan hasn't worked out. I think that's fair to say.
And it's more doom and gloom on Ringo at this point, right, than Bennett. I mean, Bennett got here a week and a half ago. This is year 3 for Keely Ringo. It's year 2 in Vic Fangio's system. I mean, I think that player knows what they want him to be, and he's the one that's struggling to be that at this point, at least. JAKIB, while I did have some concern early to start the show today, many in the chat reminded me quickly, Zander, it's been a week and a half. Give the guy some time to acclimate. But I don't know. Does he check the eye test? I don't know. What do you think about what I just said in terms of who to be more concerned on at this point and whether JAKIB could become the player we're hoping?
Well, both could. I don't think it's doom and gloom. It's just an additional dart, I think is the way Howie looks at it. So maybe if one guy doesn't work out, the other guy will. From the, you got to be careful with the eye test, as Vic says. Sometimes it's the other stuff that you're not looking at when it comes to, fundamentals, technique from play to play versus the splash plays where everybody's eyes are drawn to. So that factors into it. But, he's another guy who can run, doesn't have quite the physical stature of Keely Ringo. So a little bit undersized, I would say, for outside corner. But in that, he's bigger than Isaiah Rodgers, but I like that comparison because a lot of people look at Isaiah Rodgers and say, well, he's got to be a slot guy. And he's found a way to be at least and we'll see if he can be a starter this year. I have some concerns over that. I don't blame the Eagles for not going in that direction, but, he'll get the opportunity, get the ability to prove it. Same thing here with JAKIB Bennett. So I don't think it's doom and gloom, but I do think it's fair to say, and this is an example of what we've talked about all off season about the defense as a whole. Some stuff might work out, but everything's not going to work out. And you're already sort of seeing that by the Eagles' actions in bringing in JAKIB Bennett, because the original plan had not been working to the satisfaction early in the process that they liked. So it's not all going to work out.
Right.
And this is a perfect example of that.
Well, where do they have to be to prevail or to at least be in a position where it doesn't become such a liability that it has the chance to throw things off the rails for this defense? I mean, I don't know how bad if you had a traffic cone at cornerback too. I don't know how much that would impact. Will you still be a top 20 D with everybody else? I don't know. What do they need from that position in order to prevail and be a good enough defense to put themselves in a position to go back and compete for a Super Bowl?
Well, I think that's where Vic comes in. He's going to, if he doesn't have the corner he wants on the outside opposite Quignon, he's probably going to scale things back. He's going to probably play a little bit more zone than maybe he would prefer to sort of hide some of the deficiencies. So, you shift playing like with Jihad Campbell, I always bring up. Well, the Eagles didn't blitz a lot from the second level last year. Zach Bond could have, but he had too many responsibilities doing other things. Now that you have two guys at least projected down the road, you have that ability to do it. So I think you're going to see more blitzing in high leverage situation, whether teams are backed up like in practice last week when he made the big play at Lincoln Financial Field, or red zone when you're defending the red zone and you're close quarters, so you're not worried as much as with the cornerbacks on the outside. So you feel more comfortable if you have that type of player rolling out different parts of the scheme that are in the scheme, but maybe not used as much as Vic would like. And then, it'll scale back a little bit when you talk about the trust he had in Slay versus the trust he's going to have in any of these guys, whomever. Somebody's going to play, but he's not going to have the same confidence in them as Slay, so it's going to change how he does things a little bit.
John, how much do you think this secondary stuff could impact like a guy like Reed Blankenship, who last year played next to Gardner Johnson, who had Slay on the other outside corner with Quinyon on his side, obviously. Now you got moving parts. Quinyon's presumably going to travel at least to some extent this year. At least that's what we think. Maybe he doesn't. You got problems or questions or concerns at cornerback too. And we don't really know what Sidney Brown's going to be on a play-in, play-out basis at the other safety. How much do you think this could impact a guy like Reed Blankenship, who I think everybody in football thrives from the players around you. That's not exclusive to one position, but a lot of change around him, John.
Yeah, I think Reed is steady Eddie from an individual standpoint. I don't think it affects it much at all. But to your point, and that's the greater point, it might look worse, but not necessarily be worse from an individual standpoint for Reed Blankenship. So that's the problem with football, and we talk about it. And we talked about it again last night, most notably with the most important position. But, if you're part of the number one defense and you make splash plays, and Reed made a number, the diving interceptions and made a number of plays that stood out. And it might not look as good from that standpoint because, as you mentioned, the people around him aren't as good, aren't as accomplished. But, I think there's a strong likelihood that he's actually a better player from an individual standpoint, but the team is going to have probably less success on the defensive side of the ball.
John, where's your confidence level that this team could be a top 10 defense?
50-50. A lot would have to go right. And we mentioned, one part of the plan is not going right, at least. Plenty of time. Like I said, long term it might work out. But to this point, it hasn't. You have a vision, right? And the vision was not Jacorian Bennett. He might end up being better than the original vision, but that wasn't the plan. And that's what I'm talking about. When you have that much change, some of it might work out, some of it probably will work out, but some of it's probably not going to work out.
Right.
And that's what we're seeing in real time already at one position. Now, Morrow looks like he's going to be fine. Is Jordan Davis going to be fine with additional reps? We're going to see a lot of high hopes for that as well. Jalix Hunt, we've heard some of the things. I'm not as high quite as other people, but we're going to see. Jihad Campbell, and whether it's Smile Munden or Trot, working in for Kobe Dean, and then Sidney Brown or Drew Makuba for CJ. I've been saying it from day one. That's daunting. Those are 5 good players they lost, and really 6 and 7 if you want to throw Warren Burks in the mix as well.
I think he should be thrown in the mix, John. He was a big part of that defense being able to prevail the way they did. I mean, what do we talk about when that Super Bowl comes up? Patrick Mahomes didn't get past the midfield 9 straight drives. Well, Warren Burke was a part of that. So I think you have to include him in there. While I do feel like they have good depth at linebacker this year. John, joint practice number 2 today. Coming in, Nick Sirianni will speak before practice. What do you want to see today going into practice number 2? Yesterday was a good practice, but it seemed like it wasn't. I don't know. Maybe I did. Maybe it was just me. It didn't feel like I got as much out of it as I was hoping. What are you expecting to see here, day number 2, joint practice number 2, Eagles-Browns?
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of saw yesterday. It's dependent, I thought about this overnight a little bit. It's dependent on what's going on from a defensive standpoint when you talk about the offense, because that's how the Eagles run their offense. It's basically, every play has an option to run or pass, and you sort of do the math equation and say, all right, they're in this front, we're going to run it. They're in this front, we're going to pass it. We're going to go to the pass play, and you're going to kill the run play. And they were just, Lane Johnson explained, I was reading back, I asked him the question because he said it was nice to get a different look with Jim Schwartz's, old school wide 9 sort of mentality versus what they see every day in practice. And I think a lot of it was that Cleveland comes out in desirable fronts to run against. And that's what the Eagles do. And that's why they had 15 inside zone runs.
Yeah,
because that was the math equation. And, maybe it changes today. Maybe Jim wants to work on some different stuff, and maybe you see some different things. Defensively, it's the same stuff we've been talking about. They're trying to figure out those problems we just mentioned, all of them. And there's not a lot of clarity, which is maybe shouldn't be a surprise because Vic said it's probably going to take a couple preseason games. And maybe after Saturday's game, he starts to settle down. But right now, again, cornerback, if anything, is expanding. Safety is expanding. You get Drew Makuba back in the mix after the injury. You could even argue linebacker because if Campbell can get on the field. So things are expanding when they should be contracting. I've said that over the past couple of days. And that could be good when you think about it from an upside standpoint, but it could be bad. That nobody is seizing it and saying, because there's no reason, you saw rookies last year. Now, I think people got spoiled, but specifically with Quinyon, not as much Cooper because he was injured. Everybody knew he was going to play from basically day one. I mean, literally. Not this time. And so I think there's a stark difference from that standpoint. And we'll see, with the exception of Morrow, I would say.
Right.
Everybody's on the Morrow train.
Everybody, John. You know me. I'm on it, but a lot of other people as well. So good stuff there, John. How much collaboration or cohesion goes into a practice like this between the two coaching staffs? And what I mean by that is, you mentioned that the Browns fronts potentially showed them a lot of things that would make the Eagles run an inside zone a lot yesterday. That might not be something that you want to practice all the time. Do you think there's any collaboration between the coaches of like, hey, I'm not going to tell you what to run, but is there anything you want to work on? This is what I want to work on. How can we kind of create an environment where we can both work on those things while also putting our teams in the right positions? Does that happen at all, or is it Jim's going to run what he's going to run and the offense is going to run what they're going to run?
Well, it's both. There's a lot of collaboration, but nobody's saying, don't run what you want to run, because Cleveland's going to run what they want to run, and they want to prepare to run that. So that's the goal. The collaboration comes in with, all right, I want to, from Nick Sirianni's standpoint, for example, if he wants to work on red zone because he thinks his team's struggling in red zone, you work out a period and say, put an emphasis on that. But Cleveland's going to run what they run in the red zone defense. I mean, they're preparing as well. So there's a lot of collaboration when it comes on things that they're working on, whether it's, again, hurry up, backed up, 4-minute, all these situational football game style periods. There's a lot of collaboration when it comes to that, but no, you have to prepare your team. And obviously, think about people asking Vic, hey Vic, could you run this? Because I need that. That's not going to happen.
Vic would say, get out of here. No, thank you at all. So, all right, good stuff there. Just wanted to get the clarity on that. John, yesterday you saw what you saw from practice. You said you kind of locked in on the offense and were a little let down and ended up back on the defense. What's the plan today, John, down there at practice, and who are you focused on for joint practice number 2?
Yeah, I think I'm going to be back on the defense, because it's more, there's more uncertainty to begin with. I've been that way for camp as a whole. There's not a lot of moving parts on the offense right now, with the exception of left guard because of an injury, and even that's pretty clear. Short term it's going to be Brett Toth, or if he can't handle it, Darian Kennard if he can. Even that's pretty clear. Tyler Steen is completely locked down right guard. That was never a competition to begin with. So everything's kind of static on offense, including the scheme and the system. It's pretty static. Defensively, there's a lot going on a daily basis. So, and we'll see. And I think they're going to have, and they did yesterday. I mean, the Browns are so up against it from a quarterback standpoint. Now a bunch of guys are hurt. Shedeur can't even play if they wanted to play him. So, you're down to Joe Flacco and Dylan Gabriel pretty much, and I don't know if Dylan Gabriel should be practicing from the way he looked yesterday. So, and you don't want to give Joe Flacco at 40 years old 1 million reps in practice, but they might have to. So I think they'll look pretty good.
Do you view that as a positive, John? Sorry to cut you off, but for the Eagles defense, because Joe Flacco really knows how to play the position, as you've pointed out many times, versus if Shedeur comes in, and I mean, there's no disrespect to him or Dylan Gabriel, there's more of a learning curve for those guys to know what they're seeing, and probably easier for the defense to fool them in practice, which might not translate to a game, versus Flacco might know how to dissect it, and he's going to force you to give them different looks and maybe try some different things, or at least disguise things differently.
Yeah, well, from that standpoint, yeah, there's no question. It's tough to show Joe Flacco something that he hasn't seen before. The other guys are, rookie quarterbacks, and I'm not criticizing either of them. Vic tends to eat those guys for lunch because they haven't seen a lot of what he throws at them, certainly at the college level. So, Joe knows how to play, and that's a big part of it. And I would say, hey, the Browns had more big plays in the passing game than the Eagles did yesterday with 40-year-old Joe Flacco. So, they and again, it's amazing when you look at a bad football team, and I put that on quotations, and how many good players a bad football team has. Because the Browns got a ton of good players. Jerry Jeudy, Myles Garrett, we know. Some of their other defensive linemen are pretty impressive. The offensive line is, when you talk about Wyatt Teller and Joel Bitonio and Jack Conklin, that's legit. And Wyatt Teller's another guy. I should add him to the list of the bus guys because he's impressive. From a physical standpoint.
How did the D-line fare against them yesterday?
Yeah, well, I think the Eagles' defensive front remains the strength of the team, which is amazing. Think of how good they were last year. Yeah. And again, we bring up the Super Bowl. You had Milton Williams and Josh Sweat to the mix. How good they were last year, and they were. That's why they, that to me was the biggest part of the Super Bowl was how the Eagles' defensive front dominated the Chiefs' offensive line. Because everybody still talks about them as the strength of the team, and you still have strength of the defense, and you still have, you're still trying to figure out how high Moro Ajomo and Jalen Hunt can go, and there's still concern over, all right, is it going to be Josh Uche? Is it going to be Azeez Ojulari? Is that third rusher? So there's much more uncertainty than last year, but it's still considered the strength of the defense.
No doubt. Johnny Mac, good stuff. Nick Sirianni set to speak, John, about an hour from now, pre-practice. I know you're heading down to the NovaCare complex today. What do you expect to hear from Nick this morning as we go into joint practice number 2 in anticipation of preseason game number 2?
Yeah, Nick has gotten too well-versed on deflecting.
Yeah, man.
So,
John, he doesn't even kind of give you the whole walk around anymore on a question. He just just doesn't give you the answer and moves on.
Yeah, he's gotten to that point. He's more wordy than, he'll filibuster a lot. It's a lot like Jim. Jim was that way, where Jim would, all right, I got 15 minutes. Let me get 5 questions and filibuster and try to run out the clock. That's sort of how Nick has become. So, I'll try to get him talking about something, probably left guard or Johnny Wilson maybe. Johnny Wilson's been over the past week. He's been a guy that sort of everybody's figured out is playing pretty well, especially compared to last season, because he was struggling and dropped the football in the Super Bowl, so everybody harps on that, but he's been playing well.
Johnny Mac, good stuff there, brother. Appreciate you doing it this morning. We'll be following along on joint practice number 2 today, John, and we'll talk to you this evening on a nightcap edition of Birds 365. Well done today, brother. Get there safely and enjoy joint practice number 2. Thank you, John.
All right, thanks, everybody.
All right, thanks, J-Mac. There's Johnny Mac, John McMullen, the #1 Eagles beat reporter in town. Give him a follow at JF McMullen. Gotta love it. Good stuff there as we get ready for joint practice number 2. A lot of questions, a lot of different things to answer, a lot of different things to watch for in a practice like this. Not much